Have you ever wondered how some people seem to move with absolute clarity in their lives? But while you're seeing people consistently struggling and drowning in their doubt, or you may have seen how some people continue to grow while others are seeming to say that they have over 20 years of experience, but you actually find that they only really have a month of experience that has then been correlated over 20 something years, which is significantly different. And so, what if the problem isn't that life is unfair, but what if the problem is that most people simply never learn the rules to the game they've been playing the entire time? And you see, what's interesting about that is there are rules to every game that has been created. There's systems to every game, and every game also has instructions. And so, as the player that's playing this game, if you decide to ignore the rules, then you can't be the same person that is then willing to complain about the results of what that behavior was actually producing in your life. And you see, what's interesting about that is that's the same thing that's equivalent to somebody that is deciding to get into their car and they're driving full speed ahead 10 hours, specifically going to one specific location. And they just know that once when they reach their destination, that is leading them more closer towards success. But you know what's funny is that now when they actually get to their destination, they then find out that what they put in the instructions within this GPS, that they actually put in the wrong directions. And you see what's interesting about that? See, the problem itself wasn't in their efforts, but you see, the problem actually lied in the directions as to where they were going. And you see, it's interesting because Tony Robinson has a really good saying that says, where intention goes, energy flows. And so, what that means is that you get what you focus on. So, if you're choosing to focus on the things that's not going to actually get you the results as being a trader, then you'll actually find that you may be that same person that is saying they have over 5 years or 10 years of experience in trading, but still not having any results to show that that is really what the case is. And maybe it really is that you only have maybe 2 weeks of actual experience that has been projected over that course amount of time. And so we need to make sure that the destination of what we actually put into the GPS, because the GPS is only going to do that of what is being coded into it. So we can't blame the GPS of sending us to a destination that we personally put in ourselves. And so we got to remember what steers the boat. That's why our thinking is going to lead us down a path that is ultimately going to show what it is that we're really focusing on. And so let's continue to dive in deeper. And so again, most people think profitable trading actually starts with the entries. But I will submit to you that profitable traders actually become profitable when they start learning how to think and not getting conditioned from schools and maybe even their job currently of what to think. And they're significantly different because telling somebody what to think is conditioning them to think that there's only maybe one way of doing something. And so when you step outside of that way of thinking, then it results to some kind of disciplinary actions or even peer pressure to make you fall back in alignment to that of this one path for what you're always supposed to take. But see, when you start learning how to think as a trader, you then furthermore can actually open up the possibilities of then being able to really understand what losses can actually do for you, which is simply just revealing to you that of what can be improved on. And so we have to remember that in order for you to be a profitable trader, it starts with your thinking because your beliefs determine your actions, and your actions determines the outcome that will be a result as to what you was already thinking. And so if someone believes I'm always going to lose, then every trade becomes absolutely terrifying. And you see what's interesting about that is see you can have the right strategy. You can. But notice that whatever you focus on, remember their focus right now is I'm always going to lose a trade. So now, even if they have a wing setup, they may find themselves cutting their wins too early without allowing the trade to fully complete. And so, what that looks like is you're cutting your profits early, and majority of the time, you're then allowing your losses to become significantly more bigger. And so, what if another person decides that they need every trade to work in their favor? Well, see, then that puts pressure that actually controls your decisions. So now at this point, this leads to ego trading where you're not accepting to be wrong. And then that could lead also into revenge trading. So when you do lose, you then feel like you have to go back into the markets to recover that of what you lost instead of being consistent to that of what you're seeing is being produced. But you see, what if somebody believes that I can grow through the process? You see, then that's when they actually start to realize that the losses can become lessons instead of an emotional breakdown. So remember what we said before. It's not what to think, it's about how do you think. So as a trader, if you're allowing yourself to understand that the losses is going to come. And so when you're willing to accept and embrace that of what it could show you, you then furthermore have the proper lens to understand that you can't avoid the losses, but by embracing them, then you can discover what it was actually trying to reveal to you this entire time. And so at this point, somebody might even be wondering, well, if mindset is so important, why does strategy even matter? And that's a great question because strategy does matter. But without the right mindset, that is like somebody signing up for a gym and they have the absolute perfect workout specifically for them to get the results. They have a meal plan. They even have a trainer that's willing to guide them along the process. But guess what would happen if they decided to quit after 2 weeks of time because they didn't see the results as fast as what they wanted to? You see, at that point, it had nothing to do with the information itself or what was being given, but it had everything to do with that of what that person believed was possible. You see, they had a deadline. They wanted to see the results shown up within their time frame, not knowing that it's more about you becoming the person first that actually willing to do the work to then furthermore do the work long enough for the results to actually produce in your life from operating in that behavior. And so it's just fascinating of how most people are mad about their outcomes that they're producing in their lives. And so they go around wanting to blame the trainer or the meal plan or even the gym itself not having all the right equipment, but it had nothing to do with any of those things. But it had everything to do with that of what they believe was possible for them. So if you personally don't believe something is possible for you, you're not going to be wasting your time on something that you already believe is impossible, right? So you're not going to stick with it. Okay. And so the reason why I'm sharing this is because that's how most people operate when it comes down to hopping from strategy to strategy, trying to look for a silver bullet, of thinking that they just have to find that strategy out there that is somehow going to make sure that they never experience losses ever again. And so when they take a loss, they then just want to hop to something else, or they furthermore want to just study more about what the chart of all these different candle patterns, because you see their focus is in the wrong place. Because you see, at that point, if you're finding yourself jumping from strategy to strategy, it is not because that strategy has failed, but it's because of your fear, your impatience, and the doubt is actually interrupting the progress before your actual results can then further mature itself and show you that of what you believe is working. And so that's why some people can be given the exact same strategy, and yet one person can be growing in their account while the other one is completely destroying their account and blowing their account from left and right. Because again, it didn't have anything to do with the information that was given, but it had everything to do with the identity of who they believe they are. And so, in the first section that I want to share with you guys, is that life is a game with rules. And so, again, most people live life just reacting, but then they never stop to ask themselves, what are the rules to the game so that I then furthermore can win at the game? Because it's funny how this goes. If you don't understand the rules to the game, then there's no way for you to be successful at the game. And it's interesting because the creator designed the game to specifically make sure that it is possible for those that choose to follow in the rules, in the instructions, in the manual guide, to live of an abundance of a life. But why? It's because the creator designed the game in such a way to make sure that as many people that's playing the game can get as much satisfaction as possible, because it will be very pleasing to see from the creator that they are able to enjoy the game of what they are playing. And so I want you to imagine for a second that your creator has taken out the time to give you that blueprint of how you can actually complete the game successfully, but you're still choosing to reject that of what's already been given. But you then want to get mad when you're starting to see that the rules is not going to bend just because you want them to. And so if you're not willing to follow in the rules of the game, then you will get played by the game. And so here's the principle behind that is, you see, most people want success without studying the principles that actually produces that success. And you see, they want the multiplication of what their creator is telling them they could have without having to go through the process in order for them to actually become the person that has transformed themselves, because they were willing to let go of that was not working for them. And so you have to remember, you can't get better outcomes without first getting rid of that old software that has a faulty code. Because you see, that's like planting a seed upside down, never choosing to water it, and never putting it in a proper environment for it to get sunlight. And then you're sitting there being confused because you see that there's no growth happening over time. And you see, the issue is not the seed, but is the process of the sequences that you have stacked, maybe even out of order. Because you know what's funny about that is, you might have all the numbers for a specific lock. And let's say there are 4 specific numbers, which is 15, 25, 35, and 45. Well, let's say that it had to be in that exact order in order for you to unlock that lock. And so you have these exact numbers, but you choose to do 45, 25, 35, and then 15. And so you have to remember that you could have the right process. Doing it out of order is automatically going to give you a different result. And so there is a better way, but you first got to read your instruction manual that God has already given us so that we can equip ourselves as to what the game played in the right way can produce in our lives. And it's funny because the first thing that I think about is a game called Mario. And it's funny because here it is, if you're playing the game Mario, then you will notice that there's a lot of different obstacles in this first level. And what's interesting about that is you see that specific level that you're going to play is not going to change depending on what player is actually playing that game. You see? And so these obstacles are going to come at certain times in a sequence because it's on a system. And so if you're choosing not to learn the overall system of how to actually be successful in that level, you're not going to be able to go to the next level. And you see, most people, what they're trying to do in their lives is skip from level to level without learning the principles or what that first level is supposed to show you. And so this is why you're frustrated, because you see everybody else around you growing and they're getting to all these other levels and reaching newer heights, and you're feeling like you're left behind. And so we have to remember that knowledge itself is not power. And a lot of us have been told that. And if we hear something for so long, we start to believe that it's true. But I'm going to challenge you on that. Because, see, here's the thing. That would then mean that for every person that would have bought a course, a trading course, that once when they have gotten through this course, that they will automatically become profitable traders. Or that will be equivalent to, again, somebody that was given workout plans and instructions and everything else that comes with that, that after them going through all of those modules, that somehow their dream body would just show up after they completed all those videos. But you see, that's not how it works. It's actually the applied knowledge is power. And so what happens is most people go around living their lives just only wanting to acquire knowledge just to say that they know something. But see, you have to become very intentional with your words, because to me, how I can see if somebody knows something is truly based off of them demonstrating that of what they told me that they know. And so here it is, if you're telling somebody, here it is, oh, I learned how to ride the bike. And let's say we see there's 10 people that are now observing that or what that person said, oh, I learned how to ride the bike. If we are now observing this individual, how can we all come to the realization that that person has actually been able to learn how to ride a bike? Well, there's going to be some clear differences, maybe versus the first 10 times of us seeing that he's fallen multiple times to all of a sudden now he's not falling off the bike no more. So that itself is going to reveal and show to us that he actually knows how to ride the bike. He learned how to ride the bike. So you see, the words that we use, we have to make sure that we have the proper understanding of those words, because oftentimes your beliefs are centered around your definition to what you believe those words are. Because you remember, your beliefs is what you're operating in. That's how you create behavior. And then that behavior then becomes the output of what that specific process is revealing in your life. And so it can be something fruitful in your life, or it could come up as thistles and thorns. But what you got to do is be aware of what is it producing so that you can make sure that you're not just, again, saying that you have over 20 years of experience in an area, but you're really only producing that from that 2 weeks of time and just repeating the cycle over those 20 years. And so some people can then say, well, if God wants people successful, why doesn't everyone succeed? And I think that's a fair question. But I got to submit to you. But success has always been connected to your alignment. We talked about it before of someone feeling like they're going in the right direction. But notice, even if we're using golf terms, for example, and we see that our target is that flagpole, notice if we are positioned just 1 degree off, and then here it is, we do our backswing, and then we push forward. Notice that 1 degree, the further out that it goes, you then become much, much, much further away from your original target of what you wanted. So you see, it's not enough for you to say, oh, I was just 1 degree off. Oh, I was just off by a little bit. No, because a little bit completely takes you off course the further you go down that path. And so again, you have to make sure that you're not trying to rush the process by thinking that, oh, I have to just get another strategy. Oh, I have to go out there and get another course. When in reality, you have to first change that of what you have been believing that, oh, maybe I need to take more trades in order to be a successful trader. And as a result, you're going into the market multiple times and without having a plan. And because of that, you're getting the results of your lack of preparation. And so, even in trading, you cannot consistently violate principles and then still expect consistency of being a profitable trader. It doesn't work that way. And so remember that the creator has already established laws and rules around how to operate the game and be successful at the game. But the question is, are you willing to align yourself with the rules so that you can win with the rules? And so the second section that we want to talk about is how does trading actually expose people? And you see, trading is one of those environments that will then show you what you are trying to hide under the cover. So if you're a person again that cannot take losses because of your pride or your ego, whatever the case may be, you are going to continue to get exposed time and time again because of that. And so remember, going back into Mario, if you're trying to skip levels without again addressing one of the biggest concerns on that first level is identifying what is it that is causing you to revenge trade, or what is causing you to believe that you have to jump from strategy to strategy. Because it's not until you're willing to address that, you're going to continue to maybe even keep blowing your account. And you see what's interesting about that is there are traders that are absolutely terrified of even risking $5. But then you see other traders that are actually calmly managing millions of dollars. And so the question is, did the market change for one person versus the next? Absolutely not. But it had everything to do with what they were focusing on. Because you see, one person was just only thinking about survival, that of what they were losing. While you see the other one was focusing on stewardship, focusing on becoming the person that can then be able to manage those resources that they have continued to keep multiplying throughout their lives. Because you see, the principle itself is it's not about how much money that you make in trading. Because if you were to give somebody that had $1 million account, but with a broke mindset, then they will destroy it just as fast as it came in. So again, more than anything, you have to make sure that the losses are not meant to show you that you're not capable of trading. It's just only the process that you have to be willing to go on to embrace the losses and then manage your risk accordingly. So that of what you're putting in, let's say if every dollar that you're willing to risk, you're willing to then gain $5 other if you were to win. And so if that was the trade-off that you were doing for every other trade, would you be significantly okay if you were to lose 3 trades in a row, but then you were to win that 4th trade? You would be completely a profitable trader at that point. So remember, what you focus on will be absolutely magnified. And even if you are seeing results in trading, but you're only focusing on the 3 trades that you just lost in a row and now starting to question whether or not this is actually for you, you would then sabotage still the profits that you've already made because you're focusing on the wrong thing of wanting just every single trade to win because we have allowed school to show us that if you're not at least a 70% or higher, that somehow that means you're a failure. And so you see, this is the issue because see now you've been told on what to think, but not how to think. So now you take that broken mindset and then you try to apply that mindset into trading and then wonder why you can't produce results. And it's because they have given you a faulty way of thinking that entrepreneurship and investors operate off those same beliefs, and they don't. And so hopefully you're starting to see that this is why you cannot go forward by keeping all this old baggage of what you've been told of how to think still with you, because it's only going to keep you in the same spot, drained, frustrated, because you're trying to use all of this efforts to going forward and you're chained up to the wall. But here's the thing. The creator has already given you the key for you to unlock these shackles. But because your focus is on, oh my goodness, it's always the market's fault for why I'm losing money. Or, you know, because this strategy that I have is clearly not working and all these different things. And so what you do is you pivot, but in reality, you're still in the same spot. And it's not anybody's fault as to why you're in the same spot, but your own, because you have the key. And it's interesting because sometimes we live our lives like that. We could literally be so focused on the fact that we may be even late to going somewhere. And here it is, we're trying to find our keys or whatever the case may be. And then it's like right there in our hands. And so you see, this is why you have to clear your mind of all those old beliefs, because trying to put literally a new software into an old computer is completely obsolete. You couldn't even do an update on that. You have to get out completely all that old garbage and then replace it with something that is compatible. And so I want to share with you, when we go back into the knowledge is power, no, that's only half of the truth. And anything that's half of the truth is an absolute lie. So all the lies that you've been told, if you're not willing to address those lies, you're going to continue to get all of that of what it produces in your life. And then you're going to be maybe even getting exposed to the truth and then trying to operate in it while still believing in the lies. And you wonder why now you still feel stuck. It's because you're trying to now go left and right. But notice, you cannot do that. If you choose to go left, you now are forced to experience all that whatever on this left-hand side had to offer you, which now means that anything that was on the right, you then now immediately forfeit and the door is completely closed on the side. And so you have to remember again that there's a special currency out there that we all have, but it's very limited, because what happens is we cannot get it back. And you know what it's called? It's called our time. So how many times are you going to be willing to try to go throughout this game and continue to keep playing the game without knowing how to really be successful at the game? And so you're burning all of this time that you can't get back, and then you're feeling frustrated because you're not feeling fulfilled in the end. And so what you have to do is be observant of your surroundings and start to actually observe what is not working in other people's lives, so that you're not having to make those same mistakes and having to waste time that you didn't have to do. And so that's why profitable traders is less about predicting the markets and more about mastering yourself, so that you can become the person that is able to accept losses long enough so that you can experience the opportunities to master yourself and being able to master one kick. That one kick looks like not jumping from strategy to strategy and thinking that you're going to get a different experience over there. Because what happens is you actually reset your progress altogether. All of that time that you were developing and starting to understand a little bit more about this pattern structure, and you give that up for a whole nother strategy, your learning curve has immediately started completely over. And so, yes, you may think that you've been here trading for 5, 10 something years, but this is why I keep saying is that you're literally just repeating a cycle that is not going to change unless you change. And so the next section that I want to talk to you guys about is, again, the different operations that can get to the same result. And so it's interesting how, if again, you've been only told one way of how to do something, subconsciously, again, you start to believe that there's only one way of how to do something. So you've been told what to think, but not how to think. And so here it is. If you have been given a math problem that now says, what could get me to the result of 4? And then somebody says, well, 3 plus 1 can get me to 4. But then somebody else says, well, 8 divided by 2 can get me to 4. But then somebody also says, okay, well, 6 minus 2 can get me to 4. But then somebody also says, well, 2 times 2 can also get me to 4. And what's interesting about that is all of those get you to that outcome. But here's the question: which one would you actually choose? Because you see, what's fascinating about that is some people may choose addition, some people may choose subtraction, whatever the case may be. But what I would choose every time is multiplication. And you may ask, well, why would you choose multiplication? Because since the beginning, our Creator has told us to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion. So here's the funny thing about what the word multiplication actually means. Multiply means to increase. So everything that you do in your life is supposed to be continuing to increase that of what has been given. And so again, are you living by that principle? Or is in your life in certain areas you're starting to see that there's some division that's starting to take place, where that of what you had is starting to get diminished. And it may be because of that of what you're focused on. Because what you don't use, you will lose. Same thing in your health. If you choose to not make sure that your body is a priority by continuing to beat it into submission, then what happens is the things that you believe is not going to affect your trading results, I guarantee you it will. Because how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you cannot be disciplined of that of what you consume, or even being disciplined to working out and making sure that again, that you're giving yourself an opportunity to be thankful for the body and the health that you have, then you will start to lose it. And so that same principle happens over and over and over. So again, if we were talking about money, for example, and you had a bad psychology about money and you thought money is the root of all evil, then you're going to go around living your life, trading your time to make money. And then every dollar that you would make, you would then spend it on things that you don't need. And so what do you think is going to start to happen if that is your psychology that you have been operating on for so long, that then when you come into something like trading and there's an opportunity for you to multiply that of what you have, you start to now self-sabotage. Because whenever you experience that loss, you then start to associate how much more time would it take in order for me to get that money back? And that's one of the most dangerous thoughts that you could even have, because again, you're showing that the school has designed you to continue to operate on what to think instead of how to think. They're teaching you how to be the best employee for somebody versus how to be the actual best investor of the future of your life, or even the best business owner. And so we have to remember that every word is a seed, every deed is a seed, every thought is a seed, and most importantly, every dollar is a seed. And so if you're not being focused on where you're putting your money, or where you're putting your thoughts, where you're putting your attention, where you're putting your time, then you're going to find yourself in a lot of ways having a lot of subtraction operations in your life and a lot of division. But why? It's because you're not focusing on that of what he told you already in the beginning, to increase, to multiply that of what has already been given to you. So when you're not seeing your blessings as being blessings, you start looking at them as burdens. And so I'm sure at this point, somebody may even be asking, well, what's wrong with addition? And I would say nothing, unless you're selling for less than the increase of that of what is already available. So, what I want to share with you is this: you don't lack access to your abundance. You lack the awareness to the abundance that you already have. And so that's significantly different because you cannot operate outside of that or what you don't know. And so if you're not getting yourself informed into the options that are out there that could significantly change your results if you actually implemented them correctly, because again, practice doesn't even make perfect, but it does make progress. So all of these little, half of the truths, which is lies, are stopping you from becoming the person that could then be the person that's able to multiply that of what's been given. And so, what we have to remember is that our creator has already revealed which operations actually produces the greatest increase, which is multiplication. And so then that also now leads me into the last point, what success really is. And you see, to me, what success is not first is not saying that you have a lot of money. Success itself is not saying that you have a lot of fame. Success itself is not saying that you have a lot of connections. That's not what success is. Success itself is, are you fulfilling the very calling and purpose as to why you were designed in the first place? And because we can even break that down. So, for example, if I were to tell you or even ask you, what do you believe the purpose of a car is? More than likely, you're going to tell me it's a transportation device that can get you from point A to point B faster, right? And I'll say, okay, absolutely. But then what if somebody decides to buy a Ferrari and instead of them using it as to what it got designed for in the first place, they then decide to go and put it out in front of their garage, put a bunch of dirt in the inside, open up the sunroof, put a plant inside, and let it go out through the sunroof. Now, what I got to ask you is that car being successful in what it's doing? The answer is no. Why? Because it was designed to get you from point A to point B faster as a transportation. But because it's getting used for something significantly differently outside of what it been designed for, there's no way for it to be fulfilled. And so you got to remember that this car, the purpose as why it got designed was to fulfill a problem, and that car was meant to be the solution to that problem. So the same way that the creator now knows more about this car, the best way to how to use it, knows all of its features that it comes with, it then now wants to make sure that anybody else that acquires this car can have the best experience possible because they would like to now have more people that has a better satisfaction rate of being able to experience all that this car can provide in their lives. So it's in that creator's best of interest to make sure that they do their due diligence by giving them instructions, giving them the blueprints, giving them a guide to what it is, how it works, why it was designed, and most importantly, maybe even giving you a tutorial demonstration wise of what it is that you can do step by step in certain situations. And so here it is that we're seeing this time and time again. People making sure that it's in their best of interest to make sure that as many people can experience this product, this service, whatever the case is, by communicating with the people that could absolutely benefit from this. But then all of a sudden, we start to think that we're somehow different from our creator versus us. Because you see, our creator has created everything that we're experiencing currently right now, which means he now again knows the best way of how to live a fulfilled life. He most importantly knows all the different ebb and flows, the different seasons that are going to be a little bit harder to live. So there has to be some time to prepare for those seasons or when you're moving into those hard times. And so as a result, he was willing to do the work and most importantly, give us an example of all these things we could go through and how to actually make sure that we're equipped before we even get intersected with those challenges so that we actually have the equipment to actually slay those giants in the proper way. But you see, when you don't equip yourself first, before you go through those challenges, you then find yourself being fearful. You then find yourself being doubtful. And so again, you cannot operate outside of your beliefs. So if you're choosing to just settle for this life that God did not design for you, you automatically are not going to feel fulfilled in whatever it is that you do, because we were meant to increase that of what has been given, to multiply and to fill up. And so if you're not seeing that in your results currently right now, then you have to be willing to go back to the drawing board and see what are the beliefs that you are believing that are causing these current results. And so again, I want to really highlight that success itself is fulfilling the very purpose as to why you got designed in the first place. Okay. So this is why some people are now chasing money, trying to heal identity problems, while other ones are chasing status, trying to feel spiritual emptiness. And that's why some people so-called gain success, but yet they still feel broken in the inside. It's because your definitions are significantly different of what really success is. Because you see, profitable traders is not just about multiplying your money. It's about becoming disciplined enough to handle multiplication without destroying yourself. Because you see, just like gold has to go into the fire in order for it to become purified, all of that pressure and heat starts to actually reveal that of what's inside of it, and it starts to boil up into the surface. And you see, this is why we were saying earlier that when you're trading, you will start to see certain things bubbling up in your character. And it's important for you to, what they do with gold when they see all the impurities come up, they shave off a thin layer so that they're not getting rid of the actual gold, but they're just stripping back that tiny layer of those impurities. And normally it has to go in there 7 times in order for them to get all the impurities out to strip off that thin layer. And so again, what you have to be willing to do on your trading journey is being able to identify, keeping up with, how do you feel when you're entering into the market? Are you revenge trading? Are you not willing to accept losses? And start being able to assess where is that really coming from and start stripping back those layers so that you can identify what are those current beliefs that you may have. And then replace it of that of what's actually already pure so that you can get the results of what you really want. Because you see, if you allow the process to refine you instead of destroy you, you don't just become a profitable trader, you become a person that has been transformed into the person that God really called you to be. Because you see, what if the greatest account God is trying to grow is not in your trading account? Well, what if it's actually in you? What if he's giving you the opportunity for you to assess the rules of the game so that you can actually become better equipped at winning the game? And so this is an opportunity to learn the rules, to then study the blueprints, to then apply the principles. So, and then at that very moment, you can then watch everything start to multiply in your life when you finally start playing the game the way the creator designed you to play the game. Because life will give you what you fight for, or life will give you of that of what you accept. And so if this video has blessed you in any kind of way, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because this is an opportunity for you to grow into the person that God has designed you to be. So with that, stay blessed.